Okay, YouTubers, today's rant-ish comes courtesy of the case going on in the media of Dusten Brown and Matt and Melanie Capobianco, or Bianca, or whatever their name is, and a little girl named Veronica, who turns 4 years old today. Happy birthday. Adoption is one of those things that I also think is not totally understood or given the respect that it should be given in this country. There's a lot of preconceived notions about what kind of woman gives a baby away. But this ring has 4 stones in it, if you can see it. And one of those stones, oh god, I got lag again. Hold on, catching up. Okay, one of those stones represents a little girl. And for those who are at all good with cryptology, I will just say that it does not represent a baby, for which I enjoyed parentage, to put it one way. The thing about it is this case has so many things going on in it that are making it muddy and outright ridiculous and irresponsible, especially when you start looking at this couple from South Carolina, the Capobiancos, and involving Dr. Phil and some other weird headhunter reality show type guy that's got basically no business being involved. Freeze again. Why do I keep freezing? Anyway, I hate this computer. It's driving me crazy. Which is shameful attention-seeking crap of the highest order, which is the first thing that makes me question their ability to properly parent this child. But the whole thing, from the very beginning, early on, the mother wasn't honest about her actions, the birth mother. The birth father signed a paper. He didn't realize what he was signing and immediately wanted to retract it. Then he's in the military and goes overseas to the Middle East for a year to risk his life for our country. Comes back, fights. But I think at the very beginning, when the adoptive couple realized that he was going to fight, they should have graciously, in those first few months, done the right thing then. But they didn't, because everyone is treating this kid like a piece of property instead of thinking about what's best for her. Now, at the point that Mr. Brown won, when this kid was 27 months old, I think that he would have been a better man to try to set up some kind of visitation than take this child from a home, the only home it knew, the parents it knew. Equally irresponsible on his part. Now that he's had her for the last 2 years, and he's the biological father, and she knows him as her father, I think it's time for Matt and Melanie to go away and not traumatize her a second time. But again, it goes back to everybody wants to win. I don't think people are really thinking about, or have been thinking about since the beginning, what was best for this child. It's a circus that shouldn't exist. It's a fight that should no longer exist. It should have been resolved before she was 6 months old. Very upsetting. So I'm going to pause here and regroup what I have to say about the Indian Child Welfare Act. So, that was another freeze. Great. ICWA exists for a very good reason. When you have a population of people who were killed and herded and lied to and given alcohol, which their body can't process, smallpox, blankets, and I mean the history there is really disgusting. The way they were treated and the way that things have gone on for hundreds of years. The ICWA exists to keep Indian children from being adopted out to non-Indian families. And I think that's great. I think if you look at the history of these kids being removed from homes in large numbers, there's a history of sending them to institutions. They were vaguely described as schools, but they were basically prisons where these people basically had the Indian beat out of them, or they died from neglect and all. I just, to go into that, it's a disgusting thing to have to contemplate the history and the battles that these people have fought over decades and decades, centuries. So I think protecting those children from the past is vital and really important. And I think when you have cases like this one with Dusten Brown and the Capobiancos, adoptions at birth, I think it's fine to use that law and the benefits of that law to try to keep that child closer to a family group that it can associate with. The blood quantum thing is hard for me to answer, only because what's the right percentage? How Indian does someone have to be considered Indian, or Native American, or whatever the most respectful term is? I think that's one of those things that needs to be hammered out so the argument mellows a little. But when you have older kids who've been with their parents for years, let's say you have a case where there's a 5-year-old child whose parents die in a car accident. Now, parent A is Native American, parent B is not. When those parents are gone, should ICWA step in and insist that this child goes to a Native American family? I don't necessarily think that's the way to do it. I think that there needs to be a lot of factors taken into account. Who does this kid know? What family has it spent its time with? Because you have the Native American parent who was also a factor in those relationships and deciding who this kid was around. So, it's never just about race or money or anything. You have to look at the best interest of the child. Basically hinges on love and comfort. Again, who does this child know? Who does it spend its time with? Who can give it the best home? And I don't mean who's the richest, because I know some rich people that are horrible parents, and I know poor people that are really wonderful parents. So there's a huge big picture to look at in situations like that. But going back to birth adoptions, I suppose I'm not the one to decide that blood quantum issue debate, but I do think there needs to be a stricter definition so these arguments aren't popping up in the Supreme Court and making life hell for a 4-year-old girl who's got nothing to do with the decision-making process. If you take race out of the Dusten Brown case, what you're left with are a bunch of adults who still have made horribly bad decisions, and I think selfish decisions, and makes me want to think of the King Solomon, King who? The one that said to cut the baby in half? That's the level of selfishness that I've seen here. But, again, it's not for me to decide. If it was for me to decide, she wouldn't be moved again. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. But I guess we'll see how it all comes out. I wish that, I wish these things were easier to solve. I really do. But like I said, we'll see.